So I told you some of the bad news in terms of our emissions, we also, and all our production, but we also lead the nation of wind installed capacity. And this is a list of the different countries in the world in their installed wind capacity. And if Texas were a nation, we'd be six. It starts with the US. US just passed Germany this past year because of Texas. Then Germany, Spain, China, India. And here at the end of this year, Texas will basically have caught India for installed wind power capacity. We'll pass them next year. We'll probably catch China within about a year or so. We're building about another 16 gigawatts, possibly up to 40 gigawatts of new wind power, which is more than many states have combined of all power sources. So we've got good news stories as well with Texas. What I think is interesting about the wind is it's been such a success for Texas. We see strange political alliances come out. Basically, wind has been built in rural areas, and it's been a part of rural revitalization or rural economic development. The poorest areas of Texas make a lot of money off of wind. And so you see rural Republicans in Texas who like the economic development teaming up with urban Democrats in Texas who like the low carbon wind power, coming together to push for more renewables. Renewable power in Texas is now politically acceptable and favored, in fact, and we want to do the same thing with solar. This is surprising to a lot of people outside of Texas. This has been, in a way, could have been predicted. It's been part of our history in some respects. Going back, I'm honored to be on the panel here with Dr. Doug Barnes, who's an expert in rural electrification. If you look back at the history of rural electrification, there was a politician who grew up just a few dozen miles from where I live right now, who thought rural electrification, bringing electricity to the hill country of Texas and making those poor people richer with electricity would be good. And so he had this idea of taking energy from the urban areas out to the rural areas, and the money would follow, and it did. And he sort of rode that political story all the way through his life, becoming president eventually. He was Lyndon B. Johnson. And rural electrification was an important part of Texas in its history. And we see the same thing happening again, but the other way around. Instead of urban areas sending electricity to rural areas to bring them development and opportunity, we see rural areas sending electricity back to the cities. But the money still flows from the city to the rural area. So it's good for the rural area, but the energy flows a different direction. We can do this. We've done it before. We're doing it again. And I see great optimism out of this, because if we can do it for rural West Texas is poor in many respects compared to the rest of the nation, then we can do it perhaps with super grids if we go to the Gobi Desert, the Saharan Desert, the outback of Australia. We can take the same model to do rural economic development for a lot of areas that will help them and achieve some of the global energy goals we have. Next slide, please. Now, this is a picture. We also consume a lot of energy, I told you about. We also consume a lot of water. This is a picture of me with my two sons. My daughter took the picture, and one of my two dogs there at a public water fountain in Austin, Texas. And behind me, next click, please. And behind me is public restroom, men and women. And these are free public restrooms. They use the highest quality drinking water you can imagine to flush the toilets. Next click, please. There's a dog water fountain attached there. This dog gets the highest quality drinking water you can imagine. My dog gets higher quality drinking water than most people in the world. And this makes me sort of proud. I'm glad we could provide this for our dog, but also a little bit awkward because there are billions of people, as you've heard, who deserve access to water like that as well. Next two clicks. Texans consume on average about 150 gallons of drinking water, highly treated drinking water per day. And in the process, we consume about 25 million BTU per person per year to heat, treat, and distribute that water. I'm going to show you some slides in a second that will put that in comparison. 25 million BTU, that's 25 billion joules of energy per year, just on our water that we flush down our toilets for the most part. We only need a few gallons to survive, by the way. You need a few gallons of drinking water to survive a day. We use 150 to wash our clothes, wash our dishes, take our showers, water our dogs, water our lawns, things like that. The world would love to have that kind of drinking water available at that kind of quantity. Many people in the world survive on far less energy per person per year than we spend just on water in Texas. Next slide, please. If we look at the 2 billion people in the world who either don't have access to sanitation or don't have access to water, we can solve their water needs by investing in energy. In fact, energy and water are related in a way that we use energy for water and water for energy. And the relationship is such that if you had unlimited energy, then you would have unlimited water. And if you had unlimited water, you would have unlimited energy. But we don't have unlimited energy or water. We have limits in some place and time where we don't have quite enough water or energy, so we have constraints. And constraints in one introduce constraints in the other. The way we deal with our sanitation in the U.S. is we use energy and water. We flush the waste away with water, and then we treat it with energy at the other end. Well, not every society has that kind of option. In fact, I'm very proud to be on the panel also with Dr. Amadei. Engineers Without Borders is a great organization. We have a very thriving chapter at the University of Texas. My students are involved. One of my students left me for the summer, which always makes an advisor sad, but she went to go build latrines in Chiapas, Mexico, where they didn't need water and energy to do this, but they could still deal with the sanitation. But if we want to deal with the world's sanitation drinking water problems for those 2 billion who don't have it, the way Texans do, all it would take is another 50 quads of energy to bring those 2 billion people up to the standard of profligate consumption of high-quality water the way Texans do. That's equal to the energy consumption of the entire United States over 6 months. This represents about 10% increase in total global energy consumption required to bring that much water to everybody. Except you don't really need that much water for everyone. You can cut that by a factor of 10. So we need about 5 quads of energy to bring good, high-quality, drinking, heated, treated water to those 2 billion people. This is 1% of global energy consumption, or about 5% of American consumption. We can do this. As you just heard, it's more a political challenge, an infrastructure challenge, an economic challenge than a technical challenge. But we have the energy we need potentially to bring the water to these people. Now, here's a big thing. We use drinking water for our lawns. Our lawns don't need that high-quality water for drinking. Next slide, please. All right, let's compare Texas then. Just so I've gone through the story about Texas. It's a good news, bad news story. We produce a lot of energy. We consume a lot of energy. Some of it's dirty. Some of it's carbon intensive. Some of it's very clean and not very carbon intensive. Some of it's good for rural areas. If you can look at the world, up out of here, the world, the United Kingdom, the United States, and Texas in their per capita annual energy consumption. The 6.7 billion people in the world, on average, consume about 75 million BTU of energy per year. Remember, Texans consume about 25 million BTU just on our water in a year. If you look at the UK spends about twice that per person in a year, about 160 million BTU per year. You compare that to the United States, twice again, about 340 million BTU per year per person. And then Texas jump up again, 560 million BTU per Texan per year. Texans consume 60% more energy per capita per year than Americans, who consume twice as much energy per capita per year than British people, who consume twice as much energy per capita per year than the average global citizen. And of course, that average reflects all the high consumers as well, so there are many, many people below that. These are astounding numbers. Texans consume about an order of magnitude more energy per person per year than the rest of the world. Next slide, please. So what if the world, today's world, decides it wants to consume energy like the United Kingdom? What if the world decides it wants to consume energy like the United States? Or what if the world decides it wants to consume energy like Texans? What would that do to total global consumption? Well, I show 500 quads, or 500 quadrillion BTU as a starting point for today's world, 6.7 billion people. What if we turn to switch tomorrow, we're all consuming energy like Texans, or like Brits, or Americans? Well, if we consumed like Brits, our consumption go over 1,000 quads. How can we double our energy consumption? Like Americans, it goes up by another factor 2. Or if we consume like Texans, this is up by a factor of 8. There's not that much energy around. Next slide, please. What if tomorrow's world, 2050, 11 billion people, not 6.7 billion people, what if 11 billion people wish to consume like today? Well, that'd be about 850 quads, double that for the UK. If they want to consume like Brits, double that again like Americans. Or like Texans, it's more than 6,000 quads, or 6,000 quadrillion BTU of energy needed per year. This is a factor of 12 increase. I had trouble imagining how in 2050 with 11 billion people, all of those people will be able to consume energy like Texans, because that's a significant increase in resource production, trade, conversion, use, and then mitigation and cleanup after the fact. Next slide, please. I basically think that's impossible. I've taken these two slides, put them side to side just to show you these trends. And basically what it reveals to me is there's some haves and there's some have-nots when it comes to energy and water. And the have-nots want to become haves, and the haves don't want to become have-nots. This creates a series of questions. Next slide, please, which close it out for us. Should and could the world increase its per capita energy consumption to match Texas? It's been good for Texas. The whole economy is hurting the nation. Texas is hurting less badly than a lot of other states. So there are some really good things about our energy use. Of course, there are environmental impacts. Even if the world wanted to, could it? Will the world instead want Texas to decrease its per capita energy consumption to match the world? And if so, would Texans be willing to do so? And you could ask the same question about Japanese and Western Europeans and Australians. And are there ways to achieve the same benefits of Texas energy consumption without all the problems? And this is where we really have an opportunity. Can we achieve the high quality water in the appropriate abundance? Can we achieve the comfortable climate? Can we achieve the comforts of transportation, everything else, without spending so much energy? And that's where the real opportunity for us is, as engineers, economists, policymakers, scientists, you name it. And that is it. Next slide, please. Thank you very much.